Welcome to Hollywood Valley. My name is Alvaro Cruz, and today I'm joined by Colton Soref. Colton is a filmmaker, founder, executive producer, and creative director of Duke Media, an award-winning creative studio known for producing original content for major brands, and now he's stepping into a new world. As a co-founder of Open Canva, a visual AI platform helping creative teams create better AI visuals faster, Colton is building new tools to help people tell amazing stories. Colton, welcome to Hollywood Valley.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Before we get into Open Canva, I'd love to start with your background. How did you first get involved with commercial directing, creative production?
Yeah, great question. So I've had a very roundabout career. It has not been linear by any extent of the imagination, but I started in music licensing and publishing, really on like the business side, doing sync for songs for film and television. And then I moved into technology, and I was an early employee onto a company called Tint that was a social media marketing software. And at that point, in like 2013, like 2012, 2013, brands were just starting to kind of understand how to leverage social media as a marketing channel. And so the easiest way to describe what we did, we were kind of like a social media display platform where we took a lot of user generated content on behalf of brands and used that as like their own creative on whether it was a website or a jumbotron or an out of home advertisement in Times Square. So anytime that you see like an Instagram post on a jumbotron or in Times Square on a digital billboard, that was generally kind of our software. So it really got a crash course in content distribution, but really using user generated content. And when that company kind of grew, and in 2017 we had an exit, and we were able to kind of sell and had a successful exit. I took off and got really into travel based filmmaking, and so I just took a lot of the brand relationships that I had made and formed at Tint and connected those brands with a lot of travel based filmmakers who I met while I was traveling abroad for about 2 years. And so I kind of naturally fell into producing more so than actually directing or creating. And I was, taking videos and making, taking photos and making videos on my own as I was traveling as well, just to kind of understand how content creation was working and just how to use some of these softwares, how to make content, things like that. And when I got back from traveling, I went to go work at a few different like ad agencies, one called MOI Global that was out of the UK, but we were making a lot of B2B based content because that was just kind of in my wheelhouse. So we were creating spots for like Google Cloud and Oracle and doing different things and making animated spots. But I really understood how to create content from an actual structural perspective at an agency on behalf of brands versus just kind of doing it in the travel filmmaking world, which is more run and gun and creative. Then I went to go work at another agency in New York called Gradient, and I ran the content team there. And that was really where I got kind of the foothold into the commercial world, really on like the CPG side. So working with brands like we were talking about before, but like the Macallan, Cartier, those types of kind of like luxury brands and creating content on behalf of them. And from there, I left to start my own production company called Duke Media, where I was just a commercial director that I've been doing for the last, 10 years or so. And I was making a lot of director treatments, which is usually in the form of a deck. And I realized that AI was another tool where directors were kind of just creating imagery and it was a vehicle to kind of tell a story. And so a lot of different tools out there. I got interested in Mid Journey at the time. This is 2 years ago or so. Took the time to really understand like the coding language that was through Discord at the time. If you understand, if you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Made a deck, was really proud of it, sent it to a couple friends, and they immediately sent me one back that was made with all of the imagery in Runway. And I was like, what is Runway at the time? I didn't realize there were multiple of these models. And so I realized at that point, why is there not a place where you can just type in one prompt and see results from multiple models? And that was really the kind of thesis behind what Open Canva has now become, which is really now just about making the process of creating those images faster and easier for a lot of people because there's a lot of different tools. There's always new models coming out, and people just don't necessarily know where to start. And when they do start, there's a new thing that comes out. And so why can't it just all be in one spot?
Yeah.
And that's really was the thesis behind it.
And with your background in creating content, especially travel content, were you focusing a lot on more YouTube distribution, or were you thinking, I want to have a bigger platform?
It was all social distribution specifically for YouTube. So a lot of the in 2016, 2017, that kind of like travel filmmaking world was kind of picking up. There were some notoriety, there were some influencers that kind of started to create content on behalf of brands, specifically for their own YouTube channel, and then with sponsored based content on behalf of like say like DJI, those types of things. So it was definitely more on the social distribution side and more of like a run and gun type travel filmmaking style, which is still prevalent today in the way that you see creators. And I just wanted to kind of go the more commercial route. And so that's why I went to go work at agencies to understand kind of how that worked at scale versus, a two-person crew with a camera.
The industry has shifted where now a lot of agencies want to go back to that run and gun travel style because it feels more authentic. When it comes to your creating content, not only in your commercial directing, but also with AI generation, how do you find that authenticity?
So I think authenticity is, just honestly generally based on like the platform and the distribution that you're going for and the audience you're trying to reach. Like I think authenticity has always been a core value of commercial filmmaking and really marketing in general, right? If you break down what marketing is, it's understanding an audience and how they receive a message, right? And so an audience on TikTok and how you digest content on TikTok is actually quite different from Instagram. You look at some of these videos, TikTok is definitely more of that authentic talking direct to camera, point of view, get ready with me, taken on an iPhone, not edited, meant to kind of feel that like raw, native, organic type grungy feel that has texture and is not heavily produced. And those things tend to gravitate and perform well. Other platforms going to kind of call for different types of like mediums, right? So broadcast, which is now kind of converted to like CTV and type of things, like that type of content is not necessarily going to perform as well as it would say on TikTok. And so there's always going to be kind of different forms of filmmaking. And honestly, even if you go up the ladder to like even just documentary work, which I didn't really get into, but that's something that I do as well. There's still going to be a level of production value that is going to still have different departments and things like that. And so I was very interested in kind of how learning how that worked. Now the question is, how do I handle that from an authenticity perspective? I think it's completely dependent on the strategy, the brand you're working with, and what vehicle you're creating for. So I think there's value in both of those. I think there with AI, those things are being disrupted to a very to an extent that is actually quite a kind of interesting. But I think there's authenticity has always been a core value. And I think the way that translates is just different based on the audience you're trying to reach and the platform you're creating for.
And coming from production, filmmaking, the film industry, how has the shift translated to the startup culture? And are you excited about the new worlds that opens up as well?
So I'm very bullish on AI just in general, right? AI is a big term. I'm obviously creating a company that's specifically catered towards visuals, but obviously automation, linguistics, computation, things like that Claude can do, agentic AI, things that Claude Cowork can do for you. I'm fairly bullish on the fact that, from an artistic perspective, it almost kind of like translates creativity, right? New technology when it was going from analog film to digital, right? I think there was, a push kind of against digital because it was almost like ruining the artistic value of being intentional because you can shoot infinitely, right? And so there was a big, heavy, push against using digital. And now I'm kind of seeing something very similar with AI where people are saying like, well, that's not true art. And I think there's actually like an artistic value to actually how you can use AI. And like that just becomes a transitive property that is now communicated with AI. And so how that translates to a startup culture, I think what you like the opportunity to create yourself has never been greater. Like there is no barriers to creating a company. There are no barriers to operating a company at scale with a very small team. And what that does from a startup perspective, one, it allows you to be lean. It allows you to be efficient if you actually are efficient with your time. And two, from like an investor perspective, it allows you to keep your costs low, which is incredibly valuable as you're looking to raise. So I actually think the opportunity for startups to use these different technologies and not just specifically visual models, but language models, linguistics for computation, for automation, for agentic AI is incredible. And the opportunity that that presents is pretty insane.
It's kind of funny because I always think of the film industry and the startup tech industry to be very similar. It's a lot about finding an idea, going with the idea, then looking for someone to believe in the idea and investing in it, and then trying it out and see if it works. And it's almost the same way as like a film. Like at the end of the day, startup founders are just pitching a film, but just as a tech app.
Right. I honestly think that, I mean, if you think about that, it's just story, right? It's story is at the core of everything. And like authenticity is a way to basically kind of tell that story, right? So from a tech side, yeah, it's an idea. It's how do I have got this idea. how do I communicate that idea in a very clear way that either investors or audience or users or whatever understand it? And they'll either invest in me, believe in me, or just use it because they see value in the tool. From a filmmaking perspective, it's the exact same thing. I have this story. Who is the audience that's going to care? And how do I tell that story in a way that they're actually going to give a shit? Excuse my language. Sorry.
No, you
I
can
don't know.
we can
I don't
swear
know
on
if
this
yeah, I
podcast.
don't know if cussing's allowed on this one.
No, no, it's
Yeah.
all good.
But
Eh,
generally, that's kind of what I found, and the correlation that you're kind of drawing there is very similar. It's still at the core of all of these things is how do you tell a story? And that's why I think like from having a filmmaking background or a commercial kind of background has actually kind of helped me in the startup world in a weird way. It's how do I tell the story? How do I build a momentum and then show it to somebody who's going to care, whether it be an investor or a user.
yeah, and now with, everyone talks about AI, but, like, you can build an app, you can build an MVP so easily now without having to, like, have a huge huge budget for an MVP.
Right.
And the same thing you can do, I think AI is gonna have the same thing with film. You're gonna be able to create a lookbook, a concept that you can show to a producer and say, "Hey, this is how the film would feel. This is how the film is gonna here's a mock scene of how I'm thinking about shooting this script." And I think that's the power of the AI. I don't personally think it's gonna replace the filmmaking process. It's just gonna change it in different ways.
It'll actually change it. Yes, I completely agree with you. And it will also change it from the, say, you're working just on the commercial side of things, right? Where brands need to understand kind of what they want to see before they even show up. That's actually becoming more prevalent now. The expectations for brands of the pre production side of things to where they're really trying to, I mean, animatics have always existed, previs has always existed in film, things like that. It was very expensive to create those previs. Now with boards, in a commercial perspective, creating storyboards have always happened. But now it's like brands, the expectation there are very much aligned with not just making boards. I want to see exactly what the camera movement's going to be, how you're going to show my product, and what it's going to look like before we even get there. And that's going to be a very interesting transition. And I think a lot of agencies, commercial directors, post houses, et cetera, will adopt AI specifically to use these tools because they're more efficient, they're less expensive to create those previs, and the expectations from brands are going to be there that things that need to be, they want more control and it needs to be done faster and better.
Are there brands that are gonna think that, "Okay, we can create this previs. Can we just create the whole content, the whole commercial just using AI completely?" Or are
I
we still
think that
gonna wanna hire?
I think that's definitely possible, and I think you'll definitely like I ran into a friend at South by couple weeks ago who's starting an AI film festival in Austin. And so there are brands who are very, let's say, risk averse to kind of any sort of copyright or trademark law that right now technically hasn't been written. And they're fairly ambitious and they're experimenting and they are creating ads specifically in AI. So I do think that's going to happen. The question is, you know, is audience, right? And that's kind of what I keep going back to. And I think, Adam Mosseri had a very interesting quote as he was kind of talking specifically about Instagram, but it kind of translates to this in that, what people find interesting is actually things that are abnormal, right? And so if we have all of this access to create content at scale and it happens so fast and it's premium and it's pristine and it's crisp and it's visually engaging and there's cool editing tricks and all of these things, when you show somebody an old film that's shot with like natural, 8 millimeter film grain, and there's kind of, exposure issues, and
Yeah.
people are going to go, whoa, that's interesting because I'm not used to seeing that. And so this world of audience and what people gravitate towards is actually quite circular. And so that's what Adam Osher was talking about, where you see all of this pristine type content on Instagram. Now what people are gravitating towards is authenticity. And what is authenticity? It's made with that kind of like natural human characteristic where there are imperfections. And AI in theory is built on a threshold of making sure that there are no imperfections. And so what happens when those two worlds collide where people try to create the authentic content with augmented, reality or, I don't know, or artificial intelligence, it's interesting. I don't know. The answer to the question is I think that's definitely going to happen. And I think that's definitely going to take a share of the market. But I also don't think it's gonna take away from where audiences, like, gravitates towards.
When I think about like the authenticity and the human errors that we want, I always think of like the LinkedIn feed. I feel like everyone's message on LinkedIn is so pristine, it's so perfect. I feel like now we need to have like errors or like not capitalized words or
Yeah, yeah,
misspelled word. Like we're going back to having misspelled words as
yeah.
being more authentic than than everything being correct.
I did see. I did talk to somebody the other day that was telling me that they're actually quite happy with the linguistics of language models because it actually, while it kind of takes away from somebody actually writing something down, when they write something, use AI and read it back, at least it's in perfect grammar. So it's actually teaching kids perfect grammar, which is quite interesting. But it is true, right? I think what people kind of gravitate towards is somebody human writing this.
Yeah,
And yeah, if there are mistakes, are there misspelled words, are there whatever.
well, even now, I've been using a lot of whisper flow for writing for, like, just speaking voice to text, and it's been great
Sure.
'cause sometimes I may say a lot of ums or likes and stuff like that, and it
And it
just
keeps it?
removes it, and it
Oh,
keeps
okay,
and no,
okay.
it removes it, so it's, like, great. I can, like, have my train of thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, but to moving for someone to be hearing about Open Canva for the first time, how do you explain it to them? How does it work?
So the mission, honestly, like our mission has kind of just always been to kind of like unlock creativity with AI. That's always been the mission. Now the question is like, what does that mean? Right. And so if that was kind of like the large ambition, you kind of start from one spot. And for me, it's specific about visuals. Our tagline, right, is better AI visuals 4 times faster. And so our thesis behind Open Canva was that there's a lot of stuff going on in the market. There's a lot of things. There's always new tools. There's new platforms. There's new models. Where do you start? And that's what we wanted to be, is specifically a tool that makes the process of generating images and videos with AI simpler and faster, obviously without sacrificing quality. Generally, what we found is that when people go to, say, Midjourney or they go to GBT or they go to whatever platform they're on or whatever model they're on, they'll type something in and they'll get a result. And the idea that they had in their head is very different from what they're seeing on screen. So with Open Canva, to create that ecosystem where it makes generating images and videos with AI simpler, we're just trying to reduce the gap between what somebody has in their head and what they see on screen.
And right now to communicate, because I was playing around with the platform, it's a lot of prompting. How what are the tools or are there tools that you're building to better communicate your ideas in your head in a way that is not using prompts all the time?
So there are ways that you can kind of, again, yes, once you get like the first images, there's only so many inputs. If you think about AI in general, just how agents work, right? They're functions of inputs and outputs. The output is obviously what you see on screen. The input is actually what you're entering in a prompt, in reference images, and whatever it may be. The function is the specific model that you're using. And so, yes, there are features that we're building around to try and be more suggestive based on what the user might not even know how to describe. So you type in something very general as a prompt because I'm thinking maybe of a Ford Bronco commercial and I want to see a Ford Bronco in Iceland, let's just say. That sounds like something, a commercial that Ford would want, right? Say I'm working at an agency, I'm working a Ford commercial, and I've got this idea. I type in Ford Bronco in Iceland. The way that these models would return an output, you'll get 5 different versions. Maybe one's during the day, one's at sunset, one's at sunrise, and one is just at on the beach. One's in a glacier, one's on the wherever it may be. And so I, in my head, have an idea of some specific visual in my mind, but I might not even want to describe that. So I just type in Ford Bronco in Iceland. And then what I see, I go, well, that's not what I'm thinking of. So I go, this is crap. I'm going to move on. So the features specifically that we're trying to kind of reduce that gap between what I have in my head and what I see on screen is more about like suggestive things to the user that they might not even be thinking about. So prompts are obviously one input that you can have control over, references, things like that. So suggestive based prompting. You type in Ford Bronco in Iceland. Well, what type of car? What model? What time of day? What camera? What focal length? What area? Are you on a beach? Is it driving? Etc. And so the user, while might not be able to type that into a prompt and make a sophisticated prompt, if you suggestively ask questions, you'll start to get a very detailed prompt that now the user is thinking, oh, now those inputs that I'm actually putting in there are going to give me a result that is now more accurate to what I have in my head. So that's one feature that you were talking about. It's definitely based on prompting. Suggestive based prompting is kind of where we're going. And then also, how can you create, one click solutions? So when somebody sees an image that they really like, I can get four variations of it, or I can change one small thing, one characteristic,
Yeah.
etc.
And how do you I'm a filmmaker. I have an idea for a commercial, let's say a 60 spot ad I want to put on TikTok. How do you plan out the shots that you want to have in this commercial? And then how do you edit it? Because a lot
Great
of the
question.
times when you edit commercials, you edit to the music.
It's a great question. And just like I said, I think there's a lot of tools and there's a lot of companies now creating kind of like the AI suite for creatives, right? But let's just say, Alvaro, do you edit on like Adobe? Do you edit on
Yeah.
DaVinci? Okay,
Premiere.
so
I use
Adobe.
Premiere.
Okay, great. So let's just say you're a Premiere editor, right? Say I created an AI tool that had a video editor. Would it be very difficult for you to try and learn a new video editor?
Yes. I
Okay,
couldn't learn Final Draft or Final
Final
Cut,
Cut.
Final Cut,
Right.
Final Cut.
So I'm the exact same way, and there's been a big push, like in like the actual filmmaking world. A lot of people use Avid. That's very confusing to some people. And now there's a big push towards DaVinci because they have a very like solid editing suite, even though it was very much catered towards color. Then there's Final Cut. There's Adobe, and people generally take a lot of time and invest a lot in these softwares, these large enterprises that have my existing workflow, and it works for me because I know I'm proficient in the tool. And so I've realized that a lot of these AI tools are trying to reinvent that wheel. And so they're trying to become the AI tool for creatives to where I can create an image and now I can edit a video and I can plan out my shots and I can make my storyboards. I can make all the assets in here and now I'm going to edit it in this thing. Me as a filmmaker, just like you, it'd be very tough for me to learn that ecosystem. And so Open Canva specifically, our mission again is specifically just to make a tool that is the simplest way to create images and videos with AI. So we're almost like a camera. What you do with the assets that come out of it is completely up to your workflow. So if you are a creator making an AI film, think of us as just a camera. We're a tool for you to create assets. What you do with those, we don't want to change your workflow. We don't want to try and change user behavior from Adobe to DaVinci to Open Canva. We're just a camera. We're just an asset creator that makes that process of creating your asset simpler and faster.
And what have you been hearing from your customers about the platform? How have they been using in their workflows? Is it more
Great
for
question.
pre-planning, for production?
Great question. So definitely, again, I think there's going to be a push to where brands are going to gravitate towards wanting assets created in AI for sure. That's happening. It's very small scale right now. I think that's going to increase. Now, I would say 90% of our users are using Open Canva in the pre-production phase, whether it be on like the pre-sale side of things where a director is making a treatment and trying to communicate an idea and a concept and they can do that in a very effective way because AI makes, say, comping easier, or an experiential designer who's responding to an RFP for, say, like Spotify is throwing an event or an activation at Coachella, and Spotify team needs to see what the activation is going to look like on the fairgrounds in India. So I would say 90% of our customers, whether it be on like the creator side or the experiential side or the agency side, is generally on the pre-production side or like the pre-sales side when they're just trying to communicate an idea.
And are you able to upload brands? So if you're working with a brand, you can upload their logo and then the software can actually create the image with the logo?
Yes. That's definitely something people are doing with the platform. And again, it's just how do you communicate an idea, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who works at Spotify on the brand experiential team who's in charge of running events for Spotify. They know what an activation looks like. They know what the Indio Fairgrounds look like at Coachella. Question is when you're working with an agency, how does an agency communicate their interpretation of what that is? And so how do you communicate that idea? AI is a tool that a lot of experiential designers.
No, and the reason why is that, for example, if you go on ChatGPT images and you say, "Hey, make me a background with the logo of Spotify," a lot of times it won't pull up the logo or won't create it correctly and it'll
Yep.
make a so for this one, you can have the image generation have the actual logo as long as you upload it, or will there be copyright issues where the model itself doesn't want to create known logos because it might be a copyright?
Great question. So every language model has their own tolerance thresholds of what is allowed with copyright. So some you type in, say like Jeremy Renner, his name or whatever it is, you type in Taylor Swift. Some models won't return you a result that look like Taylor Swift. Some actually will. The way you can kind of get around that in this like gray area of AI right now is you take an image of Taylor Swift or an image of Jeremy Renner or an image of the Spotify logo, you use it as a reference and say, I need this in this model using this person with this logo, and it will create it.
And that goes to my other question is how do you choose a model? There's so many different models out there. There are a lot of them are weird names and
Yeah.
that are not very explanatory. How do you choose which models for your projects?
So it's a great question. And truth be told, that's the education barrier. There are so many models out there, and you'll start to realize over time when you use these models that certain ones are very good for, say, like character consistency. When you're trying to make like an actual film with AI and you need the specific characters to be exactly the same. Some are really good for keeping logos the same. Some are really good with keeping text the same. Some are really good for dreamscapes and kind of imaginary type kind of creative aesthetics. And the only way you really know that is if you use all the models and you kind of understand that over time. Now, how do you communicate that to somebody who hasn't spent the time doing that? And I think that's one of the really cool things at Open Canva that we're trying to create with this suggestive based prompting, where we're trying to make the process simpler. Is we can, based on the inputs that you're giving it, whether it's Ford Bronco in Iceland, I want this, a 1965 one, then it needs to be at dusk and it needs to be on the beach and it needs to be this. Based on those inputs that you go through, because we're suggestively prompting things for like trying to help you write a sophisticated prompt, we can suggest the certain models that we would expect to be the best for the result. And
Are you
so
guys
that's what we're trying. Go ahead.
are you guys keeping memory files for each project similar to like how Claude agents are having the memory documents?
That is entirely correct. Yeah. So it's a linear history based that kind of learns from itself, right? So what we call is actually like an individual project is a session. And so that session will have a linear history that you can always reference back to. But the model itself and the what we call a prompt assistant is something that you kind of talk to in layman terms and it asks you questions, understands that history as well.
So will it understanding that history avoid if you avoid the character changes from different models? So if I use one models to build this scene, but it still knows that the memory is the character is supposed to look like this, will it still remember?
That is correct. Yeah. So it will. Obviously, there can be slight variations there. And like, again, it's all about control and how do you tweak one parameter. For example, you have a scene, right? Like, I want the exact picture of Alvaro right now. Just your shirt needs to be green. So how do you write that prompt, or how do you have that exact same thing but just tweak the shirt? We're building features around specifically that, so the models can kind of learn from themselves, and the chat assistant can help you do that, so you don't have to. It's more of just kind of click through type versus you writing an entirely different prompt over again. So it's exactly like that.
And what barriers are you seeing for adoption?
Big barrier for adoption right now is there is specifically within visual AI. And by that, I mean just generating images and videos. People don't know what their problems are. There, people have, and I will say honestly, like from professionals, right? So we're definitely we're not necessarily a consumer based tool. We made a very specific choice to go after B2B and professionals because we thought that they were going to be heavy adopters of these tools because they were going to need to work faster. They're working on 18 different projects and brand expectations are higher. Those people have kind of they have an existing workflow and they can revert to skill sets that they have like Photoshop or Illustrator using the Adobe suite. They can use Canva, whatever it may be. AI, everyone is using them. They don't necessarily know exactly what their problems are yet. So they're using these tools and they go to GPT, they're using Claude, they're using Midjourney, they're using Runway, they're using the other open art, they're using Luma AI, they're using these things. they don't necessarily have a workflow because it's very difficult for them to even understand what their problems are with these models. And so while our tool is being like adopted right now, and like again, we're very young, we just hit 140 users today. Our users are getting a lot of, they love the tool and they love the features and the UX. The stickiness of the platform is how can we build upon that UX that people are really liking and create something that is very unique for them. That then becomes not a cool tool, but something that is actually they need because they're dependent on it within their workflow.
Does the platform allow you to collaborate with the rest of your team on a certain
Great
project?
question. At its current state, no. um, product speaking towards product roadmap, that is definitely something we are hearing in the market that people are after and looking for. It's how do you collaborate with teams, or how do you curate a style and then build within that style? How do you create a mood board and then share that mood board so an art director can kind of build within that mood, that style? That's definitely where we're going. At its current stage, there are ways you can kind of create certain sessions and nested sessions and things like that. I will say the collaboration features are coming, and that is definitely where our product roadmap is going.
Let's go.
Yeah,
And the reason why is that when I use AI tools or I'm creating content, I sometimes don't have all the answers to it. And when it comes to collaboration, that's a big part of filmmaking, where you collaborate with your DP, you collaborate with your writer, you collaborate with your assistant, you collaborate with the set designer. And with AI, you don't have that as much because it's just you and you have to come up with all the decisions.
sure.
And so as AI starts expanding, especially in the creative workflow, I believe that these platforms, like you were mentioning, needs that form of collaboration so you can jump on ideas and start creating more of that authenticity.
It's a great question, and I think and again, I think there's value in community, right? Just generally, like if you think about like a film set, right? A film set is you got your art department, you've got you got your casting department, you've got your production department, you got your blah, 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 you got your post department, etc. Everyone definitely collaborates. And what I've found in this kind of new world of AI, like we were talking about, people can become more efficient. Maybe there's a $1 billion company run by two people, right? Sam Altman's type thing. What you miss out on is a lot of that collaboration. Like you don't necessarily have a marketing team. You don't have, a product team. You don't have a supply chain team. You don't have an engineering team. You've got two people. And so do you miss that kind of collaboration? I think absolutely. Now, building in this AI community, I found that because it's very new and people are doing it and they're very invested in it and they've taken a lot of time to learn it, people in the community, like other founders, are very willing to kind of talk to you about what they're seeing. And so you might not get the community out of the same kind of traditional kind of structure that you would get with inside of your company or on a film set, on that actual film set. The community of founders or the community of these people who are adopting these tools are actually very, very, very open to collaborating. And that's been really, really fun to see. Specifically on like the visual artist side of things, people who are, AI artists now, very open to things. Like we have a couple of content like channel partners and things like that, and creator partners who are AI artists, specifically out of the UK, who are very willing to try new things. They're willing to give us product feedback. They're saying this is great, this isn't helpful, this is what I'm looking for, and that's been really really fun. So while it might not be the same as it used to be because it's not internal at your company or on a film set, if you're creating something, maybe there's another filmmaker who's doing something that who's making something in AI that you can collaborate with. Like, hey, all that stuff.
So how do you think AI changes the role of the director, the producer, or the creative director?
Currently, are we talking currently or are we talking in the future?
Both, in the sense of we're still very early with AI, but we are growing to that. And now a director is doing multiple roles, or
Yes.
a producer is doing multiple stuff.
I mean, maybe there'll be a film that's entirely made with one person. You know what I mean? That's kind of where you're going towards in the future. And the question is like, will it be any good? Like, will audience be driven to it? I think I told you this when we first chatted. Maybe I did. But Casey Neistat, if you know who that is,
Yeah.
he's a YouTube creator. He made a blog 2 years ago. I think it was when GBT's model, maybe we're on like model 3 or something. But he asked GBT to write a Casey Neistat vlog for him. and he made a vlog. And I think this is kind of bastardized here, but the point being is he made the vlog word for word. And he got to the end of the video and he got back on screen and he was like, "What did you guys think? It was the worst video I've ever made in my life." And the point being is because it made it very specifically and very exactly and to a specific threshold where it was trying to get what was good. It did. It did exactly that, but it had no emotion. It had no human element that would actually connect, that gave me any sort of emotional response to things. And that's what filmmaking is. That's what storytelling is. It's understanding an audience and telling them a story in the way that they're going to resonate with it. That's what we talked about at the beginning of this. And so AI will change the way that directors kind of operate. And it currently, the way that it's helped me is visually communicate an idea to someone who can kind of help me sponsor it and create it. So, like on behalf of a brand, right? The brand is paying me for my expertise to understand how to create a commercial. And it's very much helped me on the pre production side of things communicate my idea to a brand, and they'll very much align with that. Now, on the post production side of things, it's helped me in pickup shots. So, if we miss a shot, creating something with AI to kind of have that pickup there. And on the VFX side, what, maybe was I need $100,000 budget in VFX. Now I can do a 10,000. It's helped me there. Where it will help me in the future, will there be one person who makes an entire film? Probably. And so it will make a director more impactful because they can kind of take on those different roles. However, I would love to see it and see if it is impactful. And I think, for the right person, I think it's definitely possible. Same thing for the right
Yeah.
person who's a one person company who's running $1 billion like supply chain business. I mean, it's very similar, and I think it's possible. Do I think it's there yet from the creative side? I think you could probably hack it.
Yeah. Well, we're coming full circle. It's all about authenticity. If there's no authenticity in your project in the story, then it won't resonate with someone. But
It's story. It's story, right? I think again, it's marketing 101. I keep saying this. It's like, who's the audience you're trying to reach, and how do you reach them? That's like, the principle of marketing since, Marlboro cigarettes on a billboard. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's the Mad Men era, right? It's, a bunch of people in a room talking about an idea, and you tell this concept, and the concept is very aspirational because your audience is going to associate something, a celebrity with smoking cigarettes, whatever it is, and it's the
So
exact same thing.
I 100% agree. This has been like really great conversation. Now, before we wrap up, I have two main questions, and I think people listening would be interested in. If I'm an AI filmmaker, I'm just starting out, what are the best resources to maybe join that community you're talking about? And where should people learn more about Open Canva, follow what you're building, or keep up with your work?
Great question. So Open Canva it's free to join. It's free to use the tool. Just go to opencanva.co and you can hit sign up. It'll start for free. You'll get a bunch of different credits and things like that to kind of test out the platform. So would appreciate that. On the director side, where do you kind of start in terms of this AI world? I think it's a great question. And I would say currently don't have the expectation that AI is going to do everything for you. I think there's still, just like the Casey Neistat story, like there's still a level of storytelling and human emotion that you need to understand to convey a story. AI is just a tool that can kind of help you get there. Don't rely on it entirely, especially with any sort of client revisions if you have commercial based use, because that's always a tough thing. But I think people have the expectation now that AI is going to do the work for them. And it can definitely aid you in doing that work. From a creative story, it's not going to take that human emotion and get a good story that what you want. You still need to have your perspective on things. What we've realized actually, photographers who adopt at least Open Canva, they're very good at prompting because they understand composition, they understand light, they understand focal length, they understand these things. And so that actually professional knowledge has helped them get better outputs because their inputs are much better and they have that knowledge. So as an AI filmmaker starting out, try all these tools, see what works within your traditional kind of pre-production, production, post-production workflow, and see what tools can kind of help aid that journey. And there are probably tools at different points along that journey that will be better than others.
And are there any Facebook groups, communities that they can join where they can ask for any question, for any feedback or help?
Great question. Online communities right now. So we're trying to we have a Slack channel that we're trying to kind of grow and things like that. And we've got all of our, I would say, like 140 users that we just crossed on it, and we're sharing obviously weekly updates and things like that. Discord. I found some communities obviously like on Discord that are great. I haven't necessarily found the solid like community based things, but I have noticed a lot of value in going to the different festivals, like cultural festivals, like South by Southwest. You go to Sundance, which are more traditional like film markets, but there's a lot of talk about technology and innovation and where things are going, and I found a lot of value and community there. But digital community, yeah, I think Discord is obviously like always a place to kind of gravitate towards, and we're trying to build like that community specifically around visual AI right now with our Slack channel.
Amazing. Well, I'll definitely have all the links in the bio, but thank you again for coming on Hollywood Valley.
Thank you so much for having me, Alvaro. It was a good time.
That's it for this episode of Hollywood Valley. If you enjoyed this conversation, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts and share it with someone who'd want to hear it. I'm Alvaro Cruz. We'll see you next week.